Have you ever grabbed a pint of ice cream out of the freezer, sat down for a movie, and realized 2 bites in that it feels less like rich dairy and more like frozen candle wax? Or maybe you left a scoop out on the counter by accident, came back 4 hours later, and found a spooky, perfectly intact mound of white foam sitting in a puddle of clear oil. If you've noticed that eating a bowl of your favorite treat lately leaves you feeling heavy, bloated, and coated in a strange, greasy film that won't wash off your tongue, you aren't imagining things. You've just been introduced to the modern American frozen dairy dessert. We've been conditioned to think that everything sitting in those brightly lit supermarket glass cases is real, wholesome ice cream made from milk and cream. It isn't. Half of it is an engineered oil and water emulsion whipped into a frenzy with industrial gums. By the time we finish today, you'll know exactly how to read a label like a food scientist, how to spot the fake vanilla specs corporations use to trick your eyes, and how the industry exploits massive legal loopholes to sell you sweetened air. Most importantly, I'm going to show you which massive, household name brands are selling you absolute garbage, which ones are still worth your hard-earned dollars, and how to make a pint of restaurant-quality vanilla at home for pennies. Stick around until the very end, because the absolute worst offender on our list is a brand you've almost certainly bought for a summer barbecue. And what's actually inside it will genuinely turn your stomach. Before we start naming names and dragging corporate giants through the mud, let's talk about how real ice cream is actually supposed to work. Historically, ice cream is a beautifully simple thing. You take cream, milk, sugar, and maybe some egg yolks or real vanilla bean. That's it. 4 or 5 ingredients. The magic happens because dairy fat has a highly specific melting point that perfectly matches human body temperature. When a spoonful of real ice cream hits your tongue, it melts instantly, releasing a clean flavor and leaving zero residue behind. It's like a vintage sports car, engineered beautifully, running on pure premium fuel. But real dairy fat is expensive, and corporations hate expensive. So, over the last few decades, the mega conglomerates that bought up your favorite childhood brands started looking for ways to cut corners. Enter the food scientists and their laboratory bags of tricks. To understand what went wrong, you have to understand a concept called overrun. Overrun is simply the amount of air whipped into the ice cream during manufacturing. Premium brands keep this low, around 25% air, but budget and mid-tier commercial brands pump their product up to 100% overrun. That means exactly half of the tub you are buying at the grocery store is literally just compressed factory air to keep that massive bubble of air from collapsing into a flat liquid puddle on the truck ride to Safeway. Corporations can't just rely on regular milk. If you try to whip that much air into standard milk, it turns into a watery mess. So, they deploy a cocktail of stabilizers and emulsifiers like locust bean gum, gar gum, and carrageenan. Think of these gums like liquid structural drywall. They bind the water and fat together artificially, which creates a fake sense of thickness. Your tongue registers the texture as creamy, but your brain is being totally tricked by cheap industrial glue. Even worse, many brands have quietly removed the actual cream altogether, replacing it with reconstituted skim milk powder and cheap vegetable oils, usually palm oil, coconut oil, or hydrogenated palm kernel oil. When you replace dairy fat with vegetable fat, you are no longer eating ice cream. Legally, the Food and Drug Administration has strict standards. To be called ice cream in the United States, a product must contain at least 10% milk fat. If a company drops below that because they loaded the recipe with palm oil and water, they are legally forced to change the name on the package to frozen dairy dessert. But they hide that label in tiny microscopic font at the bottom of the tub, hoping you'll just stare at the beautiful picture of vanilla orchids on the front. It's a massive, systemic deception designed to separate you from your money while filling your gut with industrial fillers. And it gets much worse once you see who is doing it. Let's dive straight into the graveyard of what used to be American childhood royalty. We have to start with a brand that genuinely hurts to talk about because it used to be the gold standard of supermarket luxury. I'm talking about Haagen-Dazs. For decades, this brand represented the ultimate indulgence. You paid a premium price because you knew you were getting an incredibly short, pristine ingredient list. Their classic vanilla was just cream, skim milk, sugar, egg yolks, and vanilla extract. That was the deal. But if you walk into a Kroger or a Target today, you'll notice a quiet, corporate sleight of hand. First, the tubs miraculously shrunk. The standard pint isn't 16 ounces anymore, it's 14. But they didn't just shrink the package while raising the price. They started tinkering with the recipes across their wider flavor line. While the plain vanilla still holds the line, if you flip over their newer, more complex flavors, you will find stabilizers creeping in. We are talking about locust bean gum and gar gum. Now, these aren't toxic waste, but the whole reason you paid double for Haagen-Dazs in the first place was that they used enough real, high-quality cream to achieve thickness naturally without needing industrial thickeners. When you eat these newer formulations, they leave a strange, velvety coating on the roof of your mouth that feels completely unnatural. As one real consumer noted on a popular grocery review site, it simply doesn't taste like real ice cream anymore, and the texture has gone completely gummy. They are trading on a decades-old reputation while quietly engineering costs out of the bucket. And at over $5 for a tiny 14-ounce container, you are getting shortchanged. If you think that's a betrayal, let's talk about Ben & Jerry's. This is the brand everyone loves to buy because it makes them feel like they're supporting a quirky, progressive, independent dairy company from Vermont. But let's look at the cold, hard reality of what you're actually paying for. A pint of Ben & Jerry's at CVS or Walgreens will easily set you back $6 to $7. That is an astronomical price per ounce. What is that premium actually funding? It's funding massive chunks of cookie dough, brownie bits, and caramel swirls. These heavy mix-ins are highly effective at masking a fundamentally average, air-filled ice cream base. And here is the kicker. Ben & Jerry's is owned by Unilever. That is the exact same multinational mega-corporation that produces mass-market budget bars and commercial food fillers worldwide. When you buy a pint of fish food, you aren't supporting a couple of hippies in a renovated gas station. You are lining the pockets of a corporate behemoth. To make matters worse, a major investigative report uncovered that the dairy supply chain feeding into Vermont's premium brands relied heavily on undocumented migrant labor working under brutal, unregulated, and sometimes exploitative conditions. You're paying premium artisan prices for corporate optimization hidden behind a colorful, crunchy marketing facade. If you feel like checking your own shelf right now, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because the sheer corporate audacity gets significantly harsher from here. Let's move down the aisle to the novelty section and talk about Good Humor and Klondike, specifically those classic ice cream bars and cones you find at Walmart or gas station freezers. You know the ones, the classic vanilla bars coated in a crunchy chocolate shell. If you actually look at the label on a box of Klondike bars, you will notice something terrifying. The words ice cream are nowhere to be found on the front of the box. Instead, it reads frozen dairy dessert. Why? Because Unilever, which also owns this brand, stripped out the dairy fat and replaced it with reconstituted skim milk, corn syrup, and hydrogenated coconut oil. The chocolate coating isn't even chocolate. It is legally classified as a chocolate-flavored coating because they swapped out real cocoa butter for cheap palm oil. Real cocoa butter melts elegantly at body temperature. Palm oil creates a greasy, waxy shell that sticks to your teeth like a candle. It is a highly engineered, mass-produced illusion sold at inflated prices to people who just want a nostalgic summer treat. Next up are the supermarket budget lines. And this is where the race to the bottom becomes outright depressing. Take Great Value Vanilla from Walmart or Kroger brand vanilla. These are sold in massive tubs for pennies, and you get exactly what you pay for. Independent laboratory testing by consumer advocacy groups has repeatedly highlighted how these ultra-budget brands maximize their overrun to the absolute legal limit. When you open a tub of Great Value Vanilla, you are looking at frozen, sweetened foam. The first ingredients listed are water, corn syrup, and whey, followed by a heavy dose of cellulose gum, carrageenan, and artificial flavors. There is no real cream here. The texture is icy and brittle. When it melts, it doesn't turn into milk. It separates into a watery residue and a strange, spongy mass of gums. One consumer review perfectly summarized it as passable if you drown it in chocolate syrup so you can't taste the chemical base. They call it ice cream. But it's a food product engineered exclusively for maximum corporate profit margins at the expense of low-income families who deserve real food. But the absolute undisputed crown of deception belongs to Breyers. This is the most mainstream, trusted brand in the entire American supermarket. It's what our parents bought. Breyers used to brag in their commercials that they only used milk, cream, sugar, and vanilla. They even showed kids trying to pronounce the chemical ingredients of their competitors. Well, look at them now. Ever since Unilever took full control of the brand, they systematically gutted the recipes to cut production costs. If you walk into a Publix or a Safeway today and pick up a classic tub of Breyers cookies and cream or chocolate chip cookie dough, look closely at the label. It no longer says ice cream. It is labeled frozen dairy dessert. They completely replaced the premium fresh dairy with water, corn syrup, mono and diglycerides, and multiple industrial gums. It has a bizarre, marshmallow-like texture that refuses to melt normally. If you leave a scoop of modern Breyers out on the counter, it doesn't liquefy. It turns into a warm, frothy, rubbery pile of white foam. It is an absolute insult to the consumer, a complete betrayal of their historic pledge of purity, and a perfect example of a corporate empire milking a trusted brand name until there is nothing left but sweetened air and vegetable fat. And now, what it was worth watching all the way through for. We've dragged the worst offenders, we've looked at the corporate horror stories, and we've exposed the fake frozen desserts hiding on your supermarket shelves. But I promise you, real ice cream isn't dead. There is a clean, honest, and ridiculously delicious side to the frozen aisle if you know exactly where to look. Let's start with the brand that proves you don't have to spend $10 a pint to get authentic, high-quality dairy. Tillamook. Found in almost every mainstream grocery store from Kroger to Safeway, Tillamook is an Oregon-based farmer-owned cooperative that has been doing things right for over a century. Their philosophy is simple. They use a high butterfat recipe and refuse to pump their tubs full of excess factory air. When you scoop a bowl of Tillamook old-fashioned vanilla, you can immediately feel the weight. The texture is incredibly dense and smooth, melting naturally on your tongue without leaving that oily, synthetic film behind. Why? Because the first ingredient is real cream, followed by whole milk and sugar. While they do use a tiny touch of natural stabilizers to survive the journey to your local grocery store, they completely reject the ultra-processed corn syrup shortcuts of their competitors. At around $6 for a massive 48-ounce tub, the cost per serving is insanely low compared to the corporate chemical tubs. It is proof that a company can scale up without completely selling out its integrity. But what if you want something even denser? Something that rivals 5-star restaurant quality while shopping on a strict budget? The ultimate hidden hero of the American supermarket is sitting right inside the giant walk-in freezers at Costco. I am talking about the Kirkland Signature Super Premium Vanilla Ice Cream. This product is an absolute masterpiece of food production. It comes in a 2-pack of half-gallon jugs for less than $15, and it puts brands double its price to absolute shame. In independent taste tests and food science breakdowns, Kirkland Super Premium consistently ranks at the top because of its insanely low overrun. Costco barely whips any air into this stuff. It is heavy, it is thick, and it requires a strong wrist just to get a spoon through it when it's fresh out of the freezer. The ingredient list reads like a dream. Cream, milk, sugar, pasteurized egg yolks, and real vanilla extract. The inclusion of real egg yolks is the old-school secret. Yolks act as a natural emulsifier, binding the fat and water together perfectly so they don't have to load the recipe with laboratory gums. When it melts, it turns back into rich, velvety vanilla cream. It is the gold standard of budget luxury. Though the only downside is you need a Costco membership and a lot of freezer space to store it. If you are looking for the absolute pinnacle of purity, something completely and utterly gum-free, you need to move to the premium tier and look for Alex Ice Cream or Strauss Family Creamery, which you can easily find at Whole Foods, Sprouts, or local organic markets. Let's look at Alex Ice Cream. They are completely disrupting the industry by using 100% certified organic, grass-fed A2 dairy. A2 milk is a type of dairy that is vastly easier on human digestion, meaning if commercial ice cream usually makes your stomach churn, this stuff is a total game changer. They completely ban gar gum, locust bean gum, and carrageenan from their facility. Instead, they rely purely on premium, grass-fed cream and organic egg yolks to create a texture so decadently rich it feels like silk on your skin. It has an ultra-clean, deeply satisfying dairy flavor because the cows are actually eating green pasture, not industrial grain feed. Yes, it costs around $7 to $8 a pint, but you are paying for actual, restorative agricultural practices and zero chemical fillers. Then there is Van Leeuwen, which started as a humble yellow food truck in Brooklyn and has exploded onto the shelves of Target and Walmart nationwide. Van Leeuwen makes what is known as French-style ice cream, and their secret weapon is an obscene amount of egg yolks, often referred to by food purists as nature's xanthan gum. By using massive quantities of fresh yolks, they achieve a heavy custard-like density that completely bypasses the need for stabilizers. When you eat their vanilla bean flavor, you are seeing real, crushed vanilla pods speckling the pint, giving it a deep, complex, aromatic punch that balances the sheer richness of the heavy cream. It is uncompromised, old-school luxury available at a standard suburban supermarket. But let's talk about the ultimate way to take back complete control of your food, making it yourself. The corporations want you to believe that ice cream requires massive factory turbines, and a degree in chemical engineering. It doesn't. Your grandmother made it in a wooden bucket, and you can make it in your kitchen with 3 simple ingredients: heavy whipping cream, a can of sweetened condensed milk, and a splash of real vanilla extract. All you do is whip 16 ounces of heavy cream until it forms stiff peaks, gently fold in the condensed milk and vanilla, pour it into a container, and freeze it. No machine required. It costs about $4 to make a massive batch, it contains absolutely zero gums, and it tastes better than 90% of the commercial junk on the market. If you want to take it to the next level, the Ninja Creamy has become an absolute phenomenon for a reason. You just freeze a healthy liquid base of whole milk, real cream, and maple syrup for 24 hours, drop it into the machine, and its microblades shave the frozen block into a perfectly smooth, restaurant-quality scoop in 3 minutes flat. Whichever route you choose, the relief of knowing exactly what is going into your body is worth every single penny. Now that you know exactly who has been selling you out, let's arm you with the ultimate self-defense tools so you can completely dominate your next trip down the freezer aisle at Target, Kroger, or Publix. When you are standing in front of that glass case, ignore the front of the packaging entirely. The beautiful pictures of vanilla beans and pasture-raised cows mean absolutely nothing. Instead, use these precise, unbreakable rules to filter out the commercial garbage. First, find the phrase "frozen dairy dessert" on the box. If those words are anywhere on the container, put it back on the shelf immediately. That phrase is legal code for a product that fails to meet the federal minimum threshold of 10% milk fat. Second, look at the very first line of the ingredient list. If the first item is water, milk protein concentrate, or whey, you are looking at an engineered fluid foam, not real food. High-quality ice cream must list fresh cream or whole milk as the primary ingredient. Third, scan the bottom of the list for the presence of hydrogenated palm kernel oil, coconut oil, or vegetable oil blends. Dairy products do not require plant-based oils to be thick, and those cheap fats are added exclusively to replace the expensive butterfat that the corporation stripped out to increase its profit margins. Fourth, count the total number of industrial gums and texturizers, checking specifically for gar gum, cellulose gum, locust bean gum, mono and diglycerides, and carrageenan. If you find a dense stack of 3 or more of these stabilizers, you are paying premium money for laboratory structural drywall designed to hold factory air in place. Finally, evaluate the physical weight of the container in your hands. Pick up a standard pint of premium ice cream and compare its weight to a budget tub of the exact same size. A tub heavy with real milk and zero excessive overrun will feel like a brick, while a low-quality, air-whipped container will feel light and hollow because half of its total volume is compressed factory air. When you step back and look at the broader picture, the reality of the modern American food market becomes glaringly obvious. The commercial dessert industry has shifted entirely away from agricultural craftsmanship and transformed completely into an exercise in high-volume chemical engineering. Mega conglomerates buy up historic, beloved dairy brands, systematically alter the traditional recipes using legal regulatory loopholes, and bet millions of dollars that you are too distracted to turn the package around and read the fine print. But you do not have to be a helpless victim of corporate optimization and clever marketing schemes. By making a singular conscious shift in your everyday shopping habits, by demanding real, unadulterated food and completely starving these deceptive corporations of your hard-earned dollars, you reclaim total control over what you feed your family. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today and investing in the truth behind our daily food supply. If this investigative exposure completely opened your eyes to the quiet deception happening on our grocery shelves, please hit that subscribe button right now and share this video with a friend or family member who still buys mass-market tubs, thinking they are giving a wholesome treat to their kids. Let's spark a massive conversation right down in the comment section below. Look inside your freezer right now and tell me exactly which brand is sitting on your shelf and whether it's real ice cream or a frozen dairy dessert. If you want to see how this same corporate cost-cutting pattern has quietly ruined another classic American staple, click right here to watch our full investigative breakdown on the deceptive secrets behind supermarket cheddar cheese. Until next time, read your labels meticulously, demand better from the brands you fund, and fiercely protect your plate.